Hi, my name is Rick Bloodworth. This is the Common Sense Christian Financial Channel. I realize it's been quite some time since I've posted a video on this particular platform, but I've been real busy this summer, as I'm sure you have been as well, starting to slow down, and there's some developments I think that probably Christians need to be thinking about. Not just Christians, but everybody in general, but certainly from a Christian perspective, I believe this particular financial discussion today is going to be important because it involves potential control over our lives. How should Christians respond? What kind of strategies can we have that will be not only legal, but will also be pleasing to God? And so the topic today is on a coin called Stablecoin. Now, Stablecoin is the government's idea of kind of getting into the Bitcoin market, the cryptocurrency market. And the stablecoin type of blockchain technology is essentially one that will be controlled by the government. It will be regulated by the government. So there's some safety features on that some of the others perhaps don't have, but it will also be monitored by the government. And it will also permit them certain controls in the future that I think that we need to be aware of. So let's talk about these things. For those of you who are familiar with cryptocurrencies, they're essentially an electronic type of currency that's kept on a special type of a ledger. In the case of Bitcoin, they're keeping your money on a ledger that makes sure that that money belongs to you and that you don't lose it. Now, you still have certain problems with this type of technology. If you lose access to the internet, if you lose your password for this particular account, then you can lose all of your money. Not just temporarily, such as an internet downage or having trouble with your cell phones, but again, if you lose your pass key, you lose your code to that particular ledger account, whether it's Bitcoin or some other type of cryptocurrency, your money could be lost for all time. And so there are some dangers, there are some precautions that people need to take to make sure that things like that don't happen, as far as it's up to them. Of course, you can't control whether you have internet access at different times, and sometimes you just lose your phone. But as far as it's prudently up to you, there are certain precautions you can make, and a lot of people have been dealing with things like Bitcoin for a number of years. The government's been watching this, and so now they want to take advantage of it with stablecoin. And stablecoin is essentially a type of cryptocurrency sponsored by the government, where it allows you to take money from your bank account. And for $1 that you take out of your bank account and put into this stable coin, you get the representation of $1. Well, what's the advantage of that? Well, if you're traveling around the world, you don't have to carry money with you. Any nation and any business in any nation that accepts stable coin, and the idea is that most of them will, you can make immediate transactions that just take a few seconds. So if you're visiting France, for example, and you want to buy something at a fancy restaurant there, and you don't have euros on hand, you can just pay for it with stablecoin. And that stablecoin will convert into their currency. And again, the transaction will just take a few seconds. So it'll be very convenient. As a matter of fact, that's one of the ways that they'll market this, is the convenience. And from that perspective, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Where it becomes dangerous is when we have a government that wants to take more and more control over the lives of her citizens. There's something that has been in the works for a number of years, something that has been discussed for a number of years, and that's central bank digital currency. It's a type of cryptocurrency that is offered and controlled by the central banks. Now, a lot of people think that the Federal Reserve, the Central Bank of America, is part of the government, but you're wrong. It wouldn't be part of the government. The Federal Reserve is a privately owned organization. They're owned by the same stockholders that own the major banks around the world, and they're very much independent of the U.S. government. You may have seen some of the fights between our current president and the current administration and the Federal Reserve trying to wrestle control from one another. But let's get back to this idea of a central bank digital currency. It'll be very similar to Bitcoin or the new stablecoin that's being introduced. You may have heard of the Genius Act that Congress passed recently that regulates stablecoin and provides all the different platforms and requirements in order to take part in this stablecoin. But a central bank digital currency, this will be something a little bit different at first from stablecoin, but it allows a government or a central bank to have control over your money. Your money is in your own account on its own ledger. That's true. But it allows them to track every purchase that you make and instantly, because if you're using a stable coin or some type of a central bank digital currency that they're proposing, they have the record for that. And as governments get more and more intrusive into our lives, it may very well be that they program into your accounts the types of things you can and cannot purchase. Maybe they've determined that you shouldn't have sugar, and so maybe they limit that. Maybe they limit how many cigarettes you can purchase or alcohol or whatever else. I realize these are things that Christians probably shouldn't be taking part in anyway when it comes to alcohol and tobacco. But again, do you want that freedom taken away from you and to be partially controlled, if not fully controlled, by the government? They'll be able to monitor what you buy, let's say at your local gun store as far as ammunition, and they might decide you've just purchased too much ammunition, and so they might just freeze your account from being able to be used for that in the future. As a matter of fact, as the government becomes more and more intrusive, it'll, I believe, eventually come to something that's more reflective of the Chinese government and her people, where they all are on this central bank digital currency or a national currency, and the government can actually shut off their accounts at any moment they want to. They have something called a social score in China, and they monitor whether you're favorable or unfavorable towards the government, whether you're on particular websites that they consider to be dangerous to them, whether you're purchasing goods that they don't want you to be purchasing, and so they can just shut your bank account off. Do we really want that type of power within the hands of our government, especially when we've seen what they've done in recent years in things such as the recent flu, where they shut down our entire economy, at least put a chokehold on it for a period of several months, and forced people under penalty of law to stay within certain confines. And so, do we really want them now to have total control over your money? Well, of course, at the outset, that it won't be the only thing. Stablecoin will just be something else you can use along with cash in your bank account. But after a while, it can be certainly limited more and more. The government, just with the passing of a law, could say that now nothing other than a central bank digital currency, let's call it the stable coin they're introducing now, can be used for any types of purchase. What then? Can you see how dangerous it would be to put that type of control into the hands of bureaucrats and into the hands of government officials who may not have your best interests in mind? So what do? Well, as far as, let's just go back to this idea of stablecoin. I don't think there's anything wrong with your having a stablecoin account. As a matter of fact, I believe they're going to try and entice you into doing that. They may give you, say, 500 stable coins if you'll just open an account. Well, that'll be pretty tempting, and Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as you don't agree to use that account exclusively. They're just trying to get you used to using that account. And that's the way I believe that the door will be opened. It's already being opened just with the introduction of stablecoin and other types of cryptocurrencies, but it'll really gain momentum when they start getting more and more people involved with it. And then they can do other things. The government can start making any type of payments in stablecoin only. Maybe they'll link that to your Social Security account or other government benefit accounts. Maybe they'll come to the point where you can only pay your taxes in stablecoin, so everybody's going to have an account at that point. And as time goes by, they'll squeeze it more and more until people just stop using other things voluntarily. And then after a while, the government will come in if they want more control, and they'll make sure you can't use other things even if you want to use them. So, what's the solution? Again, I'm not suggesting for a moment that we just avoid all these things. There are certain benefits to them, but we need to have our eyes open. We need to be aware of what's going on. That means you're probably going to have to start watching the news a little bit more than you want to do that. If they ever do get to the point where they start cutting off all sorts of currency, if they just withdraw currency from the system in general and you have to use stablecoin, well, they can certainly do that. That would be a big warning, wouldn't it? Some of the remedies to that, I suppose, can range from anything that's illegal to those things that are legal. And I want to talk about the legal side. In a number of states, gold and silver have been deemed to be legal currency. And so you can use these things in a state that has already made these things to be legal. Texas is one of those states. You may live in Florida. There's a number of other states that have done this as well. And so even if they do withdraw all the paper currency, all the coinage that they have that's government issued, they can't withdraw this as long as it's legal within your state. And you'll find quite a number of people, I suspect, if it ever gets to that point, who are going to be more than willing to conduct business in gold and silver. There's all sorts of 90% silver coins already available, and you can use that to transact any business that you want to transact. There may come a point where they make it illegal. Don't be surprised if they do. But for right now, this is one of the solutions. Maybe the greatest solution is this: keep your eyes open, be aware of what's going on. Watch when government starts to become even more invasive and intrusive into your life, when they start cutting off things that are not only legal for you to do now, but are just part of the rights of an American citizen. When they start limiting those rights, you've got a government that has, I believe, come to the point where they need to be viewed with complete suspicion. No longer somebody who is there to help you, but really somebody who's there to control you. So keep an eye on it for right now. Stablecoin, again, is going to be the door that really opens it. But watch for central bank digital currencies to be talked about and to be discussed. And especially if you see any laws starting to be passed on these. They start withdrawing currency from our financial system, you'll know that the time is getting close. We need to be prudent. We need to act in as legal of a fashion as we can, but we also need to insist that our own government abide by the Constitution. Did you realize that from a constitutional standpoint, the only thing legal for money in America is still gold and silver? I realize that our politicians have played fast and loose with that, but from a constitutional standpoint, that's what was made currency. That was what was made money when the Constitution was signed, and so far as I know, that hasn't changed. And some of us are going to have to really determine, are we under a despotic government or are we still under a constitution, and run our lives according to what our conclusions are. But again, just something for you to start putting on your radar screen. I'd encourage you to start paying attention to news stories on this, reading articles on it if you find different things, and just keeping up to date with it. You'll learn more and more about this as time goes by. My encouragement is to start being aware of these things. And it's going to start with stablecoin, central bank digital currencies, and different laws that they may be passing in upcoming years that we need to keep abreast of. Well, that's the video for today. I hope it gives you a little bit of information that maybe you didn't have already. And if you already had it, maybe it'll give you a little bit of encouragement and maybe some strategies to start thinking about as far as how you can live as a Christian in a world that is becoming more and more under the control of invasive government. Well, that's the message for today. I appreciate your tuning in today. I hope we'll see you next time. God bless.